students, this is chapter number 1, which talks about an introduction to human resources development, or HRD. In this chapter, we will discuss a number of important concepts in the area of HRD. And for example, we will mention what are the responsibilities of HRD managers and HRD professionals in general. To begin with, here are the objectives for this chapter, and by the way, there will be a separate chapter where we will discuss the importance of setting out objectives at the beginning of each and every training session. Now, to begin with, here's a definition of what HRD is: a set of systematic and planned activities designed by an organization to provide its members with the opportunities to learn necessary skills to meet current and future job demands. If you would highlight some of the key words in this definition, we will go with systematic, we would go also with current and future demands. So when we talk about HRD, we talk about what organizations do. What organizations do in order to help their employees be better in general, in terms of what is needed right now. So this is the current part, and what is going to be needed in the future. So basically, we are preparing ourselves, preparing our organization and our employees, not only for improving short-term performance, but also for improving longer-term performance. And of course, learning is at the center of everything. When we talk about human resource development, we are focusing on learning. When we send our employees for training courses, we want them to learn something new so that when they come back, they would be better. Now, when we talk about HRD activities, here in the slide we will get more specific. So we will focus on what is happening in the workplace. So HRD should start with employee joining the organization, meaning since their very beginning in terms of their journey with the company. So since day one, we should start on the HRD process. We should do things like assess their training needs and make sure that they have what they need in order to do their job. The second thing is to continue throughout employment, meaning it's not a one-time thing. We don't just do human resources development in one session and then we forget about it. This is something that we do on a regular and an ongoing basis. And then it must be responsive to work and job changes. We mentioned in the beginning of this chapter that it's about current and future job demands, which means we should respond to any changes in the market, to any changes in customer demands, to any changes in the field in general. We must ensure that our employees are equipped with what they need in terms of knowledge, skills, abilities, and also other characteristics, the KSAOs, so that they can perform well in response to the changes in the organization and in the field in general. And finally, HRD must reflect corporate goals and strategies. Remember when we said that it should be focused not only on the current but also on the future demands? So this is the strategic part. Remember, when we talk about strategy, whenever you hear the word strategy, we mean that there's a focus on the longer term, there's a focus on the bigger picture, there's a focus on the future. So when we talk about HRD, we must also include the organization's goals, objectives, strategies, all these bigger objectives, all these bigger picture parts. When we talk about HRD, so in general, in organizations, they think about three main things: training and development, usually shortened as TND, and then organizational development, typically shortened as OD, and then finally career development. So in any organization, if you go and ask a human resources development manager in SABIC, what does human resources development department do in your company, he will probably answer by saying we focus on training and development, organizational development, and also career development. So we will discuss each and every one of them in detail, not only now in this chapter but also in future chapters. So a huge a big important thing that you need to focus on when it comes to training and development is making sure that you know the difference between training and development. This is a big question that also comes in exams typically. So you must make sure that you can distinguish between training and development. So in general, training and development are about changing or improving employees' knowledge, skills, attitudes. If you remember those KSAOs from your previous course, Human Resource Management. Now we will talk about like the distinction, the difference between training and development. So training provides skills and knowledge to job or task. So when we talk about training, we talk about what you are doing. If you are a recruiter, if you are a recruitment specialist, then when we give you training, we focus on your core skills and your core knowledge when it comes to performing your job. So what are the different recruitment methods? What are the different interview styles that you should know as a recruitment specialist? So sometimes we send you for training in order to know more about these recruitment methods. But when we talk about development, we talk about the future. Okay, so this is the most important key difference between training and development. So training focuses on basically what is happening right now, your skills, your core knowledge of your own job. But development is about the future. It's about preparing you for what could happen in the future. So 10 years from now, what could change in the field of recruitment? For example, if you follow the news, they are saying that nowadays companies are using artificial intelligence, الذكاء الصناعي, in order to recruit people. So even though right now we are not using it, we won't be using it 2-3 years from now, but maybe 10 years from now we should start using it. So from now we should develop these skills of yours in order to prepare you for what is going to happen in the future. Of course, training and development activities, since they are only a part of human resources development, they are exactly like HRD in terms of that they start when employee joins the organization, exactly like what we saw in a previous slide, and of course they continue throughout employment and career, meaning it starts from day one. Since the first day you join the organization, the company or the organization must start the journey of training and development, which falls under the umbrella of the more broad term, which is human resource development. So since the very beginning, they start setting out a plan for your training. They start deciding which training courses you should go for and what training needs do you have. And of course, this thing is not a one-time thing. It should continue throughout your employment until the day you retire or until the day you resign. So now let's get more specific when it comes to training and development. So some of the most common things that you will see in organizations are this: employee orientation. Employee orientation. This is why we said that it starts from day one. Usually, when do you get your orientation? In your very first day or your very first week when joining a new organization. So orientation is kind of a training. Skills and technical training. This is another activity of training and development. And then finally, coaching and of course, counseling. Let's start talking about coaching. So when we talk about coaching, employees learn units, values, and norms. So when we talk about coaching, we talk about what could like basically making sure that the employee understands the culture, understands how different units, different departments in the company relate to one another. What is the relationship between the general manager of marketing and the general manager of finance? We're not talking about personal relationships, we're talking about business relationships. So in coaching, we focus on culture, we focus on values, we focus on norms, al-a'raf, the things that are unwritten. It's not necessarily things that are only written, like rules and regulations and policies and procedures. We talk about these things that are unwritten. They sometimes call it in English customs and traditions. Customs and tradition, al-a'raf wa taqalid. So the norms in an organization. We establish working relationships and learn how to function in our jobs. So this is what happens in general when you are involved in coaching. Now, when we talk about counseling, so counseling, like in our college, you have a student counselor, Mr. Naif Al-Ataibi, أخصائي الإرشاد والتوجيه. So counseling is about helping employees deal with personal problems. When you have a personal issue in the college, you go to the student counselor. The same thing happens when you are an employee in an organization. When there's a personal issue that is affecting your performance on the job, you go and visit a counselor. And typically, the HR development department is the unit that is responsible for these things. So, what are some of the personal problems that could affect your performance? Things like substance abuse. Substance abuse. So we talk about things like alcohol or drugs. Stress management. Of course, when you are under so much stress, this will affect your work performance. So you need someone to tell you how you could manage that stress. Smoking cessation. So of course, smoking is a big problem. Not only that, it's not only a problem that affects your own health, but it could go. It could spread into affecting your work performance as well. So sometimes companies offer, services that will help you quit smoking. And then, of course, things like fitness, nutrition, and weight management. When someone is overweight, when someone needs to lose weight, of course, he or she needs help, and sometimes organizations can offer help in terms of such things. Now, moving on to management training and development. Of course, the way you train regular employees is different from the way you train managers. The skills that are needed to become a manager are different from the skills that are needed to just become a regular employee. So there is a specific specialization, a specific focus sometimes on how you train and develop managers. So what is the goal of this is basically to ensure that managers and supervisors have the KSAs, remember, knowledge, skills, abilities needed to be effective. So how can I ensure that the manager of finance and the manager of engineering have the necessary managerial skills in order to supervise a big team of people? So this is called management training and development. So there are a number of methods that are used for this kind of training and development to train managers. For example, it is called supervisory training. So how to train supervisors. Sometimes they use job rotation. Job rotation. Rotation is basically when they transfer you from one department to another. What is the purpose? What is the reason for rotation is to understand how different units relate to one another. Seminars, so things like conferences, discussions, and of course college or university courses. Now we talk about organizational development, or OD. Now organizational development is a hot topic right now. A number of your colleagues who graduated from the business department now work as organizational development specialists or analysts. Sometimes in some universities they teach it as a separate course, and there are specific courses that are only focusing on organizational development, and specific even departments sometimes in big organizations which focus on the function of OD. So what is OD? What is organizational development? It's a process of enhancing the effectiveness of an organization and its employees. How? Through planned interventions that apply behavioral science concepts. So OD is about improvement. OB is about enhancing the effectiveness of the organization, making the organization more productive, more effective, more efficient. How do we do this? Of course, we will focus on developing our employees by designing some training sessions for them, by focusing on improving their behaviors. So what is involved? We have macro and micro changes. You have taken microeconomics and macroeconomics. So when we talk about macro changes, these macro changes affect the entire organization. So macro changes focus on the organization as a whole, focus on the organization in general. Micro is more specific. It targets specific individuals, specific groups, specific teams. Okay, so organizational development involves two main things: improving the organization. How? Through improving its people. Okay, so in organizational development, the HRD professional works as a change agent in order to facilitate the change process. And again, this is another hot topic called change management. There are separate courses, separate degrees, separate certificates that are taken in change management. So it emerged, the concept of change management, it came from organizational development. Okay, now moving on to career development, the third variety of HRD. So career development is an ongoing process by which individuals progress through a series of stages, each characterized by a relatively unique set of issues, themes, and tasks. So again, a number of your colleagues are now working as career development analysts or career development specialists. What is career development? If you would highlight some of the keywords, the most important thing is ongoing. It means it never stops. Like we mentioned in previous slides, these things start from day one and they never end. It's not a one-time deal. So it's an ongoing process. What we do, what happens in this process? You go through a number of different stages, a number of different phases, مراحل متعددة. So كل مرحلة من هذول, each and every one of those stages is characterized by different set of issues, themes, and tasks. من كل مرحلة من هذه فيها مهمات مختلفة, فيها عناصر مختلفة, فيها مسائل مختلفة. Okay, so this is how you progress from one stage to another. For example, when you start as a junior analyst, and then you stay as a junior analyst for 2 or 3 years, then you become a senior analyst, then you become a supervisor, and then you become a senior supervisor, then you become a manager and a senior manager. So this is sometimes part of career development. So what is career planning then? What is career planning? Planning is when we assess means evaluate, assessing individual skills and abilities in order to establish a realistic career plan. So this is when we evaluate your skills, evaluate your abilities, so that we can put a plan for you. And then career management is taking necessary steps to achieve that plan. Okay, so what is career management? Is making sure we make the managerial decisions so that we implement the plan that we set for you. So let's move on to one of the biggest challenges that HRD is facing. So the most important the most important challenge that HRD is being faced with is playing a more strategic role in the functioning of the organization. Again, when we talk about strategic, we talk about future, we talk about longer term, we talk about bigger picture. So of course we need everything that happens in organizations must be relevant to an organization's mission, vision, goals, objectives, values. Sometimes what happens is that there is a lost connection between human resources in general and the bigger picture part, the goals and the mission and the vision of the organization. So of course a major challenge for HRD is to ensure that we are being aligned, متساويين ومتوازين ونمشي في نفس الخط with the general direction of the organization, that our function as human resource development and the the future of the organization are moving in the same direction. We should actually help our organization prepare for the future, if you remember. So of course some of the challenges is that we sometimes are unable to participate directly in strategic management, and then providing education and training in concepts and methods of strategic management and planning. So basically, if you go back to the very first couple of slides when we talk about what HRD is, focus here on the future part. So how can we make and prepare not only our employees but our managers, our decision makers, our vice presidents and CEOs? How do we prepare them for the future? What kinds of skills and abilities that we need to develop in them so that they can become good decision makers and make good decisions for the sake of the entire company. And then of course providing training to all employees that is aligned with goals and strategies. زي ما قلنا لازم كل شيء يصير في الأورجنايزيشن لازم يكون متوازي مع متطلبات الشركة, meaning it needs to be aligned with where the organization is headed. Everything we do must be inspired, لازم يكون مستوحى, inspired by the organization mission, vision, goals, objectives, and all of these bigger picture parts. Now HRD strategy. Okay, so what's the deal with HRD strategy? We mentioned that we need to ensure that everything is aligned with the bigger picture, and general direction of the organization. So of course we need to contribute ideas and information and recommendations. We need to give management, we need to give decision makers in the company our ideas and recommendations. What things can they do to improve the work environment, to make employees more productive, to improve efficiency and effectiveness? Okay, and then ensuring HRD strategy is consistent with corporate strategies, so with the organization strategies. This alignment, and then provide education and training to support corporate strategy. طبعا لازم التعليم والtraining courses that we send our employees for must always support the bigger goals and the objectives of the organization. And then finally ensuring that all training is linked to goals and strategies of the company. So كل الشغلات اللي تسويها في ال HRD لازم تكون لها علاقة بالبزنس. Sometimes the biggest mistake that organizations do is that there isn't a connection between their HRD or between their human resources function in general and the business direction of the company. Now, someone who works as a supervisor in human resource development, what is their role? خلينا نتعرف على ايش مهمة الاشخاص اللي يشتغلون in human resource development. Of course they do human resource development implementation. They are the ones who are responsible for implementing all of these important parts that we discussed just previously. So making sure that everything is aligned with the entire strategy of the organization, for example. And then when we talk about orientation, مين الشخص اللي راح يسوي لك orientation? Of course it has to be a supervisor or someone who works in the Department of Human Resources Development. They are the ones who are going to act as trainers. Supervisors والأشخاص اللي يشتغلون in general in the field of this human resource development, they are the ones who will provide training. They are the ones who will serve also as coaches. هم الأشخاص اللي يعطوك الcoaching. And then they are the ones who are also responsible for career development. We just discussed career development. We mentioned how it's an ongoing process, different stages. You pass through different stages. مين الأشخاص اللي مسؤولين عن الشغلات هذه? The human resource development people. And then finally identifying training needs, making sure that what kind of training do you need and where should we send you in order to obtain this training. Now an important concept in the area of human resources is competency. I believe you have probably already taken this concept before in previous courses like Principles of Management and Human Resources Management. أساسا اسم الكتاب حق Principles of Management is Competency Based Management. So لازم تعرفون بالضبط إيش معنى competency. Briefly introducing competency, it's a mastery of skill. So it's not only a skill, it's when you reach a level of mastery, you know it inside and out. So what are the competencies needed for a human resource development manager? لو تتذكرون in the previous course, for example, human resource management, كان في ايش competencies, المهارات او غيرها اللي يحتاجها someone who is going to work as a human resource manager. So for someone who is going to work as a human resource development manager, what do they need in terms of competencies? They must have, interpersonal competencies, meaning يعرفون يسوون communication, they know how to build good relationships with others. They must have personal competencies, so like things like attitude, personality, and of course business and management. لازم الشخص هذا يكون عنده خبرة في المانجمنت، لازم يكون عنده knowledge in terms of the business of the organization. Remember, we just said that everything that you do in HR and HRD in particular must be aligned with the company's business. فلازم تفهم البزنس طبعا حق الشركة in order to to implement some of those human resource development activities. And of course, this list is a non-exclusive list. معناته these are not the only competencies that HRD managers need, that HRD managers are required to have in order to become successful. معناته الليست طويلة جدا، لكن هذه the main categories, let us say, of what is needed. Now the major tasks of HRD managers، ايش الشغلات اللي يسووها ال HRD managers؟ They promote HRD as means of ensuring employees have competencies to meet current and future job needs. مهمتهم، واحدة من مهامهم، انهم يعرفون الشركة وال decision makers in the organization what HRD can do for them. Sometimes other managers in the engineering department, in the finance department, in the supply chain department, they don't really understand what HRD can help them with. So your core task as an HRD manager is to ensure that you let people know, you increase their awareness of what HRD can do for them. And then of course they establish the link between HRD performance and organizational effectiveness. تذكرون لما قلنا it's on the organizational level and then on the individual level. فبالتالي if you want to improve the organization as a whole, you have to improve the employees. This is what you do as an HRD manager. هذه مهمة ال HRD people is to establish that connection, that link, and you let people know what is the connection and the link between us HRD people, between people, and then the organization in general. And then of course finally developing measures of HRD effectiveness that are tied to profit. هنا مربط الفرس في الموضوع. This is how you let managers know what you can do for them. Managers and decision makers, CEOs and things like that, and people like that only understand things in terms of numbers. So show them in terms of numbers what HRD can do. إذا حسنا الامبلويز وطورناهم وحسنا أدائهم، هذا راح يخلينا نجيب أرباح أكثر. Show them these numbers. So this is what you do as human resource development decision maker. وأخيرا the roles and the outputs for HRD professionals. What people who work in HRD do. They act as strategic advisors. يعني إذا أنت تخرجت إن شاء الله واشتغلت in the Department of Human Resource Development, what are you going to do? You would act as an advisor. You give advice to different employees about training and education. You help them when you help the organization when it comes to designing systems and developing those systems. So you assist management in organizational HR design and development. You ensure that everything that happens in the organization is in line and is aligned with what the general direction of the organization. So some of your outputs is more efficient work teams. ايش الشغلات اللي انت تنتجها? What are the results of this work? Is that the teams will be more efficient. Of course, quality should be improved, and then you generate and write reports about what's happening, and then giving recommendations. You work as a consultant of organizational design. You give advice on work system design and implementation of change. قلنا change management is a huge and important concept nowadays. So what is happening? Who is responsible for this? Typically, it should be the human resource development people. ايش الاوتبut، ايش النتيجة. So what are the things that you will give to your manager. You will give them recommendations on intervention strategies. You will give them what is the plan for implementing this new change in the organization. Learning program specialist. This is another thing. Actually, some of your colleagues يشتغلون الآن as learning and development specialists, learning and development analysts. So sometimes you are a trainer. You actually give courses in your organization. You design the instructional plan. You develop and design appropriate learning programs, and then you prepare all the material and training aids. So you are basically a trainer. What is the output? Program objectives, lesson plans, and of course intervention strategies. ايش الشغلات اللي انت تعطينا اياها؟ What are the things that you will give to the company؟ انت راح تحط لهم objectives of this program. ايش الاهداف؟ لاحظوا في كل chapter there are chapter objectives for each and every training program. You have to develop objectives, and you also, since you are a trainer, you will be delivering a training course. لازم تحط lesson plan. ايش الخطة اللي انت that you will follow in order to deliver this training. You are, of course, an instructor and facilitator. You present materials, you lead and facilitate learning experiences, exactly like a trainer. And then you select, of course, the appropriate methods and techniques for training sessions. And then you are the one who is responsible for the management of the HRD program from A to Z. You are a career counselor. ذكروا لما تكلمنا على الكارير development. You are the one who help and assist employees in assessing their competencies and goals. تمسك الامبلوي هذا تشوف ايش قدراته. What are their KSAs, knowledge, skills and abilities? What is their job right now? Should they stay in this job, or should they transfer to a different department? And then how can they progress? قلنا career development is all about progressing through different stages. كيف تطلع من junior specialist إلى senior specialist. So what skills and abilities and knowledge you should develop and gain and improve in order for you to move up the hierarchy. Of course, outputs, what's going to happen? You will do workshops, you will give career guidance. طبعا راح تسوي sessions and meetings in order to discuss with these employees and individuals their future career goals. Finally, it's all about performance. So definitely you will give some advice on what can we do in order to improve performance. The performance of individuals, the performance of employees, and then the performance of groups of entire departments, and the bigger picture part, the performance of the entire business unit or organization. What are you going to do specifically so that you can achieve this improvement in performance? You will give coaching, you will implement HRD programs. انت الشخص المسؤول او هؤلاء الاشخاص اللي يشتغلون في ال HRD department are the ones who are going to design all these programs and give recommendations on how the company can improve. You are also a researcher. انت شخص تبحث، انت باحث. تبحث عن ايش؟ تبحث عن the recent developments in the field. ايش ال best practices in the industry. ارامكو ايش تسوي؟ شركات امريكيه ايش تسوي؟ الجامعات العريقه في مجال البزنس والمانجمنت ايش النظريات اللي توصلوا لها in order to improve organizational performance and improve training effectiveness. Of course, you are going to give reports. You are going to design. Sometimes you are the one who is going to conduct some research, and of course, based on that research, you will give your recommendation. Finally, some major challenges for HRD. تكلمنا في البداية كان عن the most important challenge, which is to play a more strategic role. لكن هنا some of the most common challenges that are faced by HRD. الشغلات اللي ال HRD لازم يشتغل عليها. Increasing diversity. You have studied about diversity in previous courses before. For example, here in the kingdom, when we talk about diversity, we talk about the inclusion of more women in the workforce. eliminating the skills gap. So we will study later on something called a gap analysis. So making sure that you have the required skill level in order to perform your job. Then meeting need for lifelong learning. So in organizations ما نبغى قلنا it's not a one time thing ما نبغى نسوي training مرة واحدة في الحياة and then we forget about it. We need to make it the culture of the organization. ولازم نغير المفهوم هذا في أذهان الموظفين أنفسهم, so it becomes something that they do all their life, not only with us in the company لكن حتى if they left for other organizations. So how can we change their mindsets about this? Then facilitating organizational learning. احنا الاشخاص اللي نسهل او these are like we are the people who should be responsible for facilitating organizational learning. Like, and of course this is a challenge. How can we ensure that learning is being implemented effectively in the organization? احنا قاعدين ناخذ فعلا نحقق الاهداف اللي نبغاها through learning. And of course finally addressing ethics, اخلاقيات العمل, اخلاقيات المهنة. So how can we ensure that we are following an ethical code and that we train people in terms of ethics in the organization? And then the last part is, this is the framework that we will study throughout our course. So for any HRD process, this is the the framework that they follow. These are the steps that they follow to do anything with regards to HRD. They assess needs, then they design programs, they implement these programs, and then they finally evaluate them. Sometimes this thing is referred to as the ADIE model, ADIE, assess, design, implement, and evaluate. So this is the end of chapter number 1. It was an introductory chapter. In this chapter we have talked about some of the most important concepts in the field of human resources development. In future chapters we will dig deeper into these steps. So we will talk more about assessment, more about design, implementation, and of course evaluation. And good luck. See you on the next chapter.